And the next thing I knew, I felt myself raising out of my body and standing above my body. I'll never forget that because I looked down at my body and wondered why that person down there was laying on the table. I didn't see any movement from him, but yet I could look across on the other side of the sheet, and I was watching the doctor operate on me. When the machine flatlined, the nurse went running out of the room and said that she had killed me, something that today I do not blame her for. And I wish someday that she might watch this video and see that I would like to talk to her and tell her it wasn't her fault. Well, needless to say, I was standing up there and I felt somebody next to me. The escort that was beside me said it was time to go. And we went to the most beautiful place that you could ever imagine. I was standing in a field and there was tall grass in front of me and to the right. And I can remember wildflowers to my left, and then far to the left were tall trees that looked like kind of like pillars. And there was clouds in front of me. And these clouds were the most beautiful clouds I have ever seen. There were three of them. The two on the sides were pure white. The one in the middle was more of a pearl color. And I remember the escort telling me that I was not allowed to look back. But yet I could see side to side and I could see in front of me. It was the most unusual thing because it was almost like a panoramic view. Like I said, I could see long ways to the left, long ways to the right. But everything in front wasn't very far away with the clouds. Well, I had the opportunity to stand there and look at my surroundings. I'll never forget looking to the far left and seeing those trees. Those trees had great big tree trunks. The only thing I can compare it to in this day and age is a sequoia tree. It was the beautifulest tree that I think I've ever seen. The leaves at the top were bright reds, burgundies. There was two different colors of greens. There was some yellows, but all of the leaves were at the top and there were no branches going down the tree. I remember the colors were so bright. There was something that even today is hard for me to explain because the colors were so different than what I was used to seeing when I was alive on Earth. But the other thing I noticed is that on the leaves underneath, color was gold color. Then I started studying the trunks. Here, trunks look really dirty. Well, the trunks that I saw were the most brilliant brown with gold edging on it, which was something that I had never seen before because everything that I seen as far as trunks were very dirty, but these were not. Well, to the right and still to the left of me was wildflowers. And there was colors I have never seen before here on Earth. They were brilliant colors. And the other thing I noticed was the flowers were all facing towards me and the leaves were all facing towards me, and they were almost like they were leaning towards me. Now, there was no wind where I was standing. It was like everything was flowing. In front of me and to the right was tall grass. The tips of the grass were a gold color, and then the long strands were a green color. And every one of those strands of grass was flowing towards me. It was as if there was energy that I had never felt before. And each one of those flowers and trees and grass showed me love that I had never felt before. Standing there for a little bit, I noticed that the escort that I had was not standing behind me anymore. And all of a sudden, I started watching a video of my life. I watched a video from the day I was born, which I was laying on my mother's stomach all the way until I was 28 years old. It was the most detailed thing that I have ever seen in my life. Watching my parents and how they raised me and how they taught me and gave up a lot for me when I was growing up. I played a lot of sports when I was growing up. That was one talent that I was gifted with when I was younger. And I played a lot of ball, and I watched how my parents did without and the rest of my siblings did without, because being on the ball field, even back then was a lot of money for that day and age. I watched as I got older, I watched my military experience. And I watched when I was in college playing ball. and I watched how I treated people in the business field. And some things were good and some things were not good. And some of the things I was not very proud of because of the way that I treated people. When I was standing there in the field going through this, I noticed that none of my boats were there. None of the motorhomes were there. None of the houses or the many cars that I had were there with me. What I was being judged on was how I treated people. And I wasn't very good to people. Even when I was playing sports, you have to do everything a little bit better than everybody else. And sometimes you did things you probably shouldn't have, but you got away with it and you made that basket. At 28 years old, when this experience happened, I knew that I could do better. And I knew that I could have done better, but I didn't. But the other thing that I noticed when I was going through this experience was it was all done with love. I did things wrong, and I experienced the feelings that people had that I hurt along the way. And I realized that again, that I could have done better. When this video was over, and again, I lived this in my mind. I did not watch it in a video form. I lived it. But I realized that whatever was going to happen was because I did it. I didn't have anybody to argue with, nobody to talk over the situation that I was in. It was what it was. After it was over, I felt calm, and I was standing there and I looked up at the cloud and I heard a voice that said, "Come." And I started walking. And one thing I noticed was the grass was all turning towards me. The flowers were turning and following with me as if to push me forward. But when the voice came from out of the cloud, rays came out from around behind the clouds. And it was as if those rays were pulling me towards the cloud and the person that was calling my name. I got up to the cloud, about this much of the arm came through the cloud, and I had the opportunity to study that arm. And I have to remind you that time was not an issue. Like I said, I had no idea how long I was gone. I just knew that time was not even an issue. I had a chance to study that forearm and see how strong it was. I looked at his hands, and his hands were like this, as if to hold my hand and bring me through that cloud. And it was fingers pointed, thumb extended. I'll never forget that. As I studied the hand and the arms, I could tell that he was a strong person. And the hand was on an angle where it looked like it was taller than me because the hand was kind of coming down. And I'm 6'3", and I'm about 270. And so I'm not a small man, but his hands were bigger than my hands. And I'll never forget that. It was something that I thought either he was a farmer, worked construction, or perhaps a carpenter, where he used his hands a lot. And I was instructed through my mind to take his hand, and I knew I was dead. I knew that I was not going back because I was told not to look back. And so I went to grab the hand, and the hand started to come back through that cloud. And I grabbed for that hand twice because I had felt something that I had never felt in my life before. I felt love that I had never felt before. And I realized that I needed that. I did not want to go back. When the hand went back into the cloud, a voice came and said, "It is not yet your time. You have more things yet to do." I'll never forget that. It's in my mind every day for the last 40 plus years. It is not yet your time. You have more things yet to do. And the next thing I knew, I was back in my body.